more than 50% of your games are played with a side deck. And to that end, some of you have been asking how I side when playing Lunalight. I'm here to answer that. Before I get into things, I kind of wanted to address some of the frequently asked questions that I get about the deck. So I think the number one is pure Lunalight better than branded Lunalight? Now, if we're comparing the build that you see on your screen to branded Lunalight, I'd say they're about even. I think what will sort of differentiate the two of them will sort of depend on what you expect to go into the tournament. So they each have their pros and cons, and these are things that you want to consider before picking either of them. So in terms of consistency, they're about even. Both of them have about 13 starters. So if you look at the top row and then the first three, these are all your 1.5 card starters that will get you to 1 or 2 Liger. And then I guess you can kind of call Prosperity a 14th, although I really wouldn't, because in this deck you can only really afford to banish 3 cards from your extra deck to find something. So there is an argument to cutting Prosperity, and I am leaning towards doing so, but I feel as though since I only own one heavy polymerization that I kind of have to play Prosperity because it does help me find it when I do lose the dice roll. So that is the whole reason why I'm playing it here. And now of course when you're playing the branded package, you will be playing Branded Fusion in here as well. So that's something I will now get into in a second. So yeah, speaking about the branded package, so the main benefit that the branded engine gives you, in my opinion, is that it allows you to play through K9s a lot easier than this build can. So with the branded version of the deck, your first activation, or when you open the Branded Fusion, you're going to activate your Branded Fusion, and the first monster you're going to summon to your side of the field is a Rinbroom. As soon as you have a Rinbroom on your field, you are insulated from Izuna. So something that you would have all have noticed from the ban list is that Izuna is still at 3, which I think is fair because it is more of a modern hand trap, which people have been asking for, than it is an engine piece. So it being at 3 is completely fine, but it is one of the benefits of playing the branded build is that you can kind of just deal with K9 then and there. So if you expect to play against a lot of K9, then I would probably recommend playing the branded build. It also has the benefit of being able to play the Fallen and the Virtuous, which is just such an incredibly versatile card when going first or second. Being able to sort of help you dodge targeted negation when going first, although you need very specific hands to combo through, and then being able to be used as a non-engine tool during your opponent's turn to help clear the board. Again, in the turn 0 exchange, it also helps you against K9, because if your opponent gets to the point where they have a Lupus and it isn't on the field, and they activate Lupus's effect, you can just chain the Fallen and the Virtues from your hand to pop the Lupus. The Lupus will get banished, and they will not be able to exceed summon, which means you could basically combo through, and they lost one of their best recursion pieces from the deck, being that it got banished. So a lot of use in the branded package, but I think something that a lot of people don't talk about is that it consumes a lot of your extra deck space, and Lunalight is a deck that doesn't really have a lot to begin with. So being in a position where you have to give up like 3 of your spots for the branded package is always something that you need to consider. So that is, in my opinion, the con of the branded package, because it gives you less versatility, and a lot of times you lose access to Saber Dancer, which is what you'll need to beat over monsters that have targeting and card destruction protection, which have more attack than Liger. So that's just something that you have to think about, and it's only going to come up in niche scenarios where you're going to need the Saber Dancer, but when you do need the Saber Dancer, you really miss it in the branded package. And you also lose access to the IP, which again isn't something too big. A lot of people criticize me for playing the IP, and I can't exactly blame them because it doesn't really do too much to the deck, and a lot of times it feels like a win more piece. But the whole reason why I played, as I've said a few times in the past, is because it reinforces your boards when you have to play through Droll. So with IP, if you get rolled, your end board is going to be IP, Edgarus, and a Liger. And then during your opponent's turn, you can use your IP to link into an SB and banish something. So you have more pieces of interaction, which is something that Lunalight kind of lacks, right? So the entire end board is ending on 2 Ligers for the most part, or 1 Liger Baguska, which isn't very interactive. I mean, it's very difficult for your opponent to out that board, but a lot of times there are decks that can kind of capitalize on this, so you really do need more pieces of interaction. Like, Liger is incredible, but it's not an automatic win con. So a lot of times people can find ways around Liger, so you have to know your opponent's matchup. It's not a case of you're playing Lunalight, you get your Liger and you win. A lot of times it's going to feel like that, but obviously to take yourself that extra step further, you need to know when exactly to use your few pieces of interruption so that your opponent doesn't get to a position where they can out your Liger, because if they do, you don't really have the recursion to sort of win from there. Going off on that tangent, I think moving back to the point I was trying to make, that the advantage of playing this one is that you get the consistency advantage of the branded deck via the Foolish Burial Goods without compromising on extra deck space. So that is the benefit of playing this version specifically. But then, you know, the drawback is that it has a harder time playing against K9. I guess something that I also need to talk about again is pros and cons. And a pro of the branded deck is going to be, if I have to consolidate things, that it can play through K9 better, but it plays through Droll worse. This version of the deck plays through Droll better, but plays into K9 worse. So again, it really just comes down to what you fear and what you expect to play against. I feel most comfortable with this version of the deck for the reason that I feel as though I don't have to worry about K9 too much right now, although that could change after the YCSs in the middle of February. And I also like having the additional push which allows me to play through Droll, which I feel as though everybody is still main decking. So this is why I choose this build, but obviously pick the one that works best for you. And I would recommend learning how to play both if you're interested in Lunalight, so that you can make a more informed decision that aligns better with your playstyle. So the second question I get is, why do I play one copy of Heavy Polymerization and Imperm in the main deck? So as for Heavy Polymerization, the only reason I play one is because I only have one. And when you live outside of America and Europe, I live in South Africa, it's very difficult to get, especially if you want to avoid paying for DHL and import and duty taxes, which is why I have the one. I would definitely play more if I had it, and if I did, I'd probably cut one copy of Thrust and the Black Gold Loss so that I could have 3 of them in the main deck, which is just such an incredible breaker when going second. And I guess that's something I just have to deal with because I only have one. Black Gold Loss is obviously incredible when you get to search it via Thrust, but it's not something that's super necessary since we do have Imperm in the deck, so that if we have to use a Thrust while our opponent has nothing on their side of the field, we can still fetch an Imperm for their turn, which is decent enough, right? So that is the whole reason why I'm playing one heavies, but if you have more, play more. As for Imperm, a lot of people have been asking if they can cut this for Impulse, and you 100% can. Impulse is a much better card, and for the same reason why I'm only playing one Heavy Polymerization is that I don't have Impulses, so I am making do with Imperm. But there is the benefit of playing the Imperm, and that is because I cannot type on the camera, but because Spell Canceller happens to be a card in the format that K9 Crystron will be playing, and you need reliable ways, or at least some way, to sort of deal with this when playing Lunalight, because there's barely anything you can do if this hits the field. And what Imperm kind of does, it represents a way in which you can deal with this. So sort of the line that K9 Crystron will go for is that they'll summon the rank 5 princess. They won't use its effect just yet. They'll summon it to the side of the field before they're machine locked, and then they'll use the effect of Self After to summon itself and the machine effects from the graveyard to then make a Nova into infinity. So the reason why they do this first before activating the effect is because with the infinity on the field, they are in a position where they could negate something like a Ghost Spell that would stop the princess from summoning out the spell cancel from grave. But it's kind of a telegraph play, so as soon as you see them summon Nova, you're going to drop, or at least I do, I drop the Imperm on the princess, and then they're in a position where even if they make the Nova, its effect's negated, so they can't summon the spell canceller from the graveyard. So that is kind of the benefit of playing the Imperm, but everywhere else you're going to wish this was an Impulse. So this is something you guys will need to decide for yourselves. Like I said, I don't want to lose to order to win cards, so I am playing the Imperm. I obviously don't have the Impulses, and that obviously influences the decision. But this is something you guys are going to have to play test for yourselves and kind of decide, is it worth playing the Impulse, or rather, is it worth playing the Impulse for a very specific matchup, or would you rather play the Impulse that kind of has like a blanket against the format, if that makes sense. So I'll leave that to you guys to decide. Jumping into side deck, and I think when I'm going first, my patterns is generally the same as it always is, right? Because Lunalight is a deck that basically just wants to get to Liger, and if you do, you're in a position where it's very difficult for your opponent to kind of win from there, especially if you know how to use your pieces of interaction to sort of prevent them from ever reaching a point where they can beat the Liger. So when I'm going first, this may seem kind of boring, but I will just take out the 3/4 loss for 3 Ash Blossom. I will take out the Heavy Poly for Call by the Grave, normally, unless I'm playing against a turn 0 deck, in which case I want to take something else out for the Call by the Grave, which I'll get into now. And then I'll take out 1 Imperm for 1 Solemn Judgment, because Liger doesn't really have protection against evenly matched, and sure, you can use Silverhound to negate the evenly match, but a lot of times your opponents can kind of bait this, and if they do, and they resolve the evenly match, you only really have one Liger on your side of the field, which puts you in a position where they can then break your board, and because this deck doesn't have a whole lot of recursion, you're then in a very bad situation when you finally get to your turn again. So I feel as though one Solemn Judgment kind of helps with this. Against Dracotail matchups and against very specific decks like I think Memento, I would also make space for the different dimension ground. So I know this kind of conflicts with Liger, and a lot of people have correctly pointed this out. You guys are not wrong for that. But the reason why I will play the dimension ground is because against decks like Dracotail that have a ton of non-engine, they can sort of stop you from getting to a Liger, right? So I know I've shown replays where I've been able to play through like a 4 loss and 4 hand traps, and this deck can do that. But a lot of times against a skill pilot, it's going to feel like they know just where to use the hand traps to get maximum value. And when they do, about 2 to 3 hand traps is going to stop you. So 2 hand traps will maybe stop you about 60-70% of the time. But if they have 3, then the number drastically jumps up to like 90-95. So I feel as though having different dimension ground puts you in a position where, yes, your opponent can stop you to getting from Liger that turn, but if you have a thrust or you hard open this, you can then search this and it buys you a turn where you get to try again. And so it is sort of a panic button, but it is something that has been helping me, which is why I'm consistently playing it. And I think that's more or less it. I think maybe if I'm playing against a turn 0 deck, I will keep the heavy poly in, because there are some scenarios where like you're playing against just some deck that has like 3 copies of Izuna in it, and they hand trap you the Izuna U, and they kind of put you in a position where it feels like you're stuck, but you just have the heavy poly and a couple of names in hand, and instead of being affected by the choke points where they would have stolen your Collider check, you can then use the heavy poly to kind of cheat out either a Leo Dancer or a Liger Dancer, which puts you in a position where, or puts you in a better position than just passing your turn or ending on like an SP or something. So in those very specific scenarios, I'm keeping the heavy polymerization in, and I'll just take out then the 3 copies of Imperm. But most of the time, doing this is completely fine. Like I said before, we can always just fetch the Imperm off of the Thrust. It's not really a bad card, it's just never really great. Although most of the time with Thrust, assuming we get hand trapped and we're still able to combo through, we're going to go for the Black Coat. But if you hard drew the Black Coat, then you can just go for Imperm instead. So it's not too bad. There could be something better that you can put in, but I think we are kind of stretched for extra deck space right now, so we're making do with what the best we can. So I feel as though that is good, and I'll now move into what it'll kind of feel like when you're going second. When you're going second, it's really going to depend on the matchup. So for example, if I'm playing against K9 Crystron, I'm taking out the black, I'm going to put in 3 Perulia, and I'm taking out, okay, that shouldn't have been here to begin with. I'm taking out the Black Code Loss that was in the main. I am taking out the Pot of Prosperity, as hard as that may be to believe, and I'm taking out one piece, well, one of the Black Sheep. So you don't want to affect with your engine too much when you're going second, but you can afford to play with 1 Black Sheep when going second. I think there is also an argument to instead starting out one of your Silver Hounds instead, but I feel as though hard drawing the Silver Hound, if you're only playing 1, puts you in a very bad position where you can't combo through. So the logic behind this is that, again, I am just trying to maximize the ways in which I can find Imperm to stop the Spellcaster, because the inboard is very strong. I don't want to take anything away from the K9 Crystron community, but the thing that I fear most is the spell cancelers. So I want to play as many Charmies as I can, and I think the 3 that are most, or the 2 that are most needed for the matchup will be Full Loss and Perulia, which increases the chances of me finding the Imperm, assuming that I draw one of these. It also incentivizes them to sort of put the brakes in their play, but if they don't, then you know, it does allow me to get to the Imperm, which can punish them. It also increases the likelihood of me finding heavy poly, which is why you can afford to take out the Prosperity or something else. So I feel as though that's all you need to do. This deck is sort of, I have said this in a previous video, but a lot of your engine pieces are non-engine, in the sense that your opponent has to stop you from getting to Liger, and if you have more ways to sort of just push through, then it becomes a lot more difficult for them to sort of do that. So I feel as though this is generally enough, even though a lot of people may argue to put more in. This seems to be what is working for me, so obviously if something else works for you, you can go for that instead, but if I'm given a recommendation, it would be to do this. Against Vanquish Sould, I'm doing something similar, so I'm putting in the 3 Perulia, and again I'm taking out the Black Goat, the Pot of Prosperity, and 1 Black Sheep when I'm going second, And I'm also going to put in a 3 evenly match in while taking out 3 imperm. So imperm is obviously kind of bad against Vanquish Sould because they can just dodge it by tagging into another name. And of course the logic behind playing the Purulia is that they summon so much from hand, it allows us to get into more resources. So they obviously have to think twice as to how they're going to build their board, and if they do take you up on the challenge, then you're more likely to find evenly matched, which is a bit of a weird one against them because they can just end on the Rock of the Vanquisher after you resolve evenly match, and then they still have a lot of plays during your turn, so not super good. But the reason why we do play this, and I'll get into why evenly match is so good this format, is just using this to sort of get rid of the trap from their side of the field, and the field spell puts you in a position where if you can then get into Liger, you should win. Because one of the challenges that you have when you're going second against them is that the field spell kind of protects their board from monster destruction, well, their monsters from being destroyed by card destruction, I believe, once per turn. I could be wrong, it could just be any kind of destruction, and a lot of times that means you're going to need to get to a second Liger, which is difficult when you're going second and your opponent is interacting with you. So evenly does help simplify that process. And then of course it's very difficult for them to get into out in Liger unless they have that rank 4, and then even then you can kind of see it coming, and if you play your Liger correctly you can just stop them then and there. So this is what works for me. You guys can let me know if you agree or not. When playing against Dracotail, I'm putting in 3 Ash Blossom and 3 evenly match. I'll also take out then the usual 3 of Prosperity, Black Goat, and Black Sheep. And then I will also take out 3 Imperm, which, again, the Imperm can be useful against the matchup. Like if you use this to stop, I think, the Lucius or the Arthalion, it can kind of minimizes the amount of resources that they have. But a lot of times Dracotail pilots just have so many resources, they just get to the same board. And anyway, the reason why I think Ash Blossom is so good is because it's good against basically any card in their deck, and it's not bad at being drawn as a 6th card, because then you can then choose which of their 3 traps to sort of negate with the Ash Blossom. So I feel as though this is too good to pass up on in the matchup, so I'd rather take out a subpar card for it. And then evenly match is just incredible against their matchup. I spoke about it previously, and the reason why this is good is because the Dracotail Flame can only negate spell cards, so resolving the evenly match generally means that the only interaction they have is 1 set card, the one that they choose, and the Femina in hand. So yes, of course the Femina can fuse into something incredible depending on the pieces that they have in their hand, and that'll obviously start a whole catastrophe of chain links. But a lot of times I feel as though if you clean up their board, they don't always have enough in their hand to kind of resolve the Femina in a way that is beneficial to them in the specific matchup. We of course also have auto wins in heavy polymerization and Lunalight fusion, so there's a lot of things that they have to negate, and if you see an evenly match, then they're in a position where they really can't do too much, and it is just feels at times all too easy to kind of beat them from the position. I think the issue with the Dracotail matchup isn't going second, it's more when going first, just because they have so much non-engine pieces that when played correctly can sort of just put a stop to your play. So they also have the ability to make a Titaniclad, and if they do, you can say goodbye to one of your Ligers, which is why against Dracotail, if I know I'm playing against a Dracotail pilot, you have to go for double Liger. Like, don't even think about Baguska, it doesn't exist against that matchup because they can just negate this or pop it or something with one of their grave effects. So double Liger is what you want against them almost all of the time, and if you can get a good read on your opponent during game 1 that they aren't Dracotail and you end on double Liger, you're probably gonna win because they can only really deal with one of these, and if they deal with one of them, you just take out whatever they use to get rid of it. So, and of course if you have Saber Dancer, you can just OTK from there, or rather it becomes a lot easier to OTK. So for me, the problem against Dracotail is always going first, it's never going to be the going second part of the matchup. My thinking against Branded is somewhat similar, and I'm going to put in 3 evenly match, 2 Dark Blue no more, and 1 Dark Hole. And then I'm taking out 3 Imperm, Black Sheep, Black Goat, and Prosperity. So against Branded, the only hand trap in the conventional sense that I'm playing is Full Loss, which does put in a lot of work against them unless they correctly identify that they can go for the Sanctifier line, which sort of means that they're not going to give away too many draws and they can just play during your turn. I like evenly match against them. Of course, it doesn't really kill Branded, but it does sort of simplify things enough to where you can play through their end board and just get to a Liger and start punishing them from there. Dark Hole No More, obviously the same thing. I think the most important card is Dark Hole, which is why I bothered to play one of these in my side deck, is because if this deck doesn't play a lot of hand traps, right? And if they get to a Sanctifier and they do the Idol Statue lock, you can then thrust into a Dark Hole if you haven't hard drawn it, and sort of get rid of the Idol Statue from your side of the field, which then allows you to play. So Dark Hole is obviously not going to destroy their board because they will have the, I think it's the Branded Banishment or the quick play spell in their graveyard that protects them from card destruction. So the main reason we play this is just to get rid of the Idol Statue from our side of the field so that we can play. So I feel as though you should play one of these just to respect Branded, because you don't want to lose to any or to win things. I already spoke about this when I kind of spoke about the Spell Canceller. So it is something that consumes one of my extra deck spots, but it has helped me win games against Branded because of it. So I think it is necessary, but again, it's up to you guys to decide if you're going to play against Branded or you predict there'll be a lot of Branded players. If there is, trust me on this one. If not, then you're better off playing something else instead. Against Radient Typhoon, I'm putting in 3 Perulia, 3 Evenly, and 2 Dark Ruler No More. And then of course I'll take out 3 Fualas because I don't feel as though they special summon from the extra deck a whole lot. They definitely special summon from their hand a ton. I think from their deck and extra deck it's maybe 2-3 summons, but then it's like 4 materials out of their hand. So Perulia feels as though it gets more value. So I would prioritize the Perulia in that matchup over the Fualas. I would also take out the 3 Imperm because it's not really going to do a whole lot against them. Your Black Coat does basically nothing when going second, and Prosper is just okay. So it'll look something like this. So you will have the 3 Perulia, which kind of puts a sort of a stop to their plays, or rather incentivizes them to stop playing. Otherwise you're just going to have enough material to break through their board. Evenly Match puts in work against them. They obviously do have a negate in their deck, in that they have the Trap and the MST combo, which just negates anything, which will also put work to your Dark Ruler, but they only really have one of those. And then they have the interaction from the hand. I forgot what its name is, but it summons itself to the field and then like spins 2 monsters to the deck. So I feel as though those are the 2 main pieces of interaction that you have to worry about, and these bait the negate, and if they don't bait the negate, then they resolve and they kind of clear your opponent's board. So they almost always have to use the MST combo to sort of negate either an Evenly or Dark Ruler. And if you open both, then you're in a very good position because there's so many must negate cards in your deck for your opponents. So I see I have a 3rd Imperm in here that could be something else. Probably a bit of an oversight to mine. So yeah, you'll keep 2 Black Sheeps on your side of the field, take out the 3 Imperm. So this is what your deck's going to look like post-siding. So you'll have your 2 Black Sheep just because it helps you play through things a bit better, especially against decks that have layered interrupts, so you don't really always know what to expect. The Perulia gets you a lot of value because, well, they summon from their hand a ton, and then they have to use the negate on either the Evenly Matched or the Dark Ruler, which means that you can then use your engine pieces more efficiently, or rather you'll feel a bit more confidence in using them to kind of get to a Liger, and once you do, there's nothing they really can do to out it. The mirror match is a bit of an interesting one, and I think generally speaking I'm going to take out a black, well, let me just do this correctly. I will put in 3 Ash Blossoms, and I will take out a Black Sheep, Black Goat, and a Prosperity, because again, I've been saying this for a while, but you really want to put yourself in a position where you can stop a Lunalight player from getting to a Liger, and you know, if an Imperm or an Ash Blossom is resolved correctly, it really puts them in a position where they need, like, a lot of times it's going to feel like they're going to need 2 other cards in hand to kind of play through. So very incredible against the matchup. And a lot of times too, I won't do this all of the time, it'll just depend on what my thinking is, but I might just take out the 3 Fualas for 3 Evenly Match, because I mean, Lunalight is just going to combo through whatever Malshami you throw at them. They don't really care about it a whole lot, and because of that, you can draw all the pieces you have in there, all you want in the world, and it's a bit difficult. So I am saying this tentatively because sometimes I will keep the 3 Fualas in my deck against the mirror match, because it just allows me to sort of see some of these pieces more reliably. But I think when it comes to the mirror match, you really are just hoping for a way to sort of get to Leo Dancer, not Liger Dancer. So when you're going second, of course, if you can get to a Liger Dancer, you can nuke their board since the Liger isn't protected against Liger. But I think a lot of times they'll be prepared for this, and if you are able to get to a Leo Dancer, they are then in a position where their Liger can't destroy your Leo Dancer, but your Leo Dancer can destroy their Liger, assuming they have another monster on the field that you can attack into, and then you use Leo Dancer's effect to nuke the board because Liger is not affected by it. So I think in the mirror match, that's just the tip, is that you want to kind of prioritize making Leo Dancer. Yeah, and it is a matchup that definitely favors the person who is going second, so it feels a lot like the Tenpai mirror does, and it's kind of silly, but it is something that you will need to know, and I think that's the best tip I can give you, is just to prioritize Leo Dancer over Liger for that specific scenario.